The greatest manipulator of human emotion and action is fear, and it is being employed en masse. Joe Biden has announced that he wants another lockdown. He definitely hinted at this on the campaign trail, saying that he would trust his scientists. And guess what his scientists just said? Hey, another lockdown would be a good thing. I don't know how exactly. One has to evaluate the cost and benefits of doing so. But the one thing for certain is that the motivating factor is fear. They are going to tell you at every single step that you are going to die, that coronavirus is going to infect your loved one, it's going to kill you, despite the fact that the death rate among cases has been falling. And as we've been testing, more and more we are seeing increased numbers of the virus. Originally, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Why? So that the hospitals would not get overwhelmed. There was great fear that this would be a gigantic killer of the human race, and we wanted to be able to buy time in order to deal with it. That's totally fine. At the time, the shutdown made sense. However, they're still shutting down 8 months later. How does that happen as the hospitals are not nearly overwhelmed? Yes, there are people that are going to contract the disease. Most people know of multiple friends that have already had it. I might have already had it. There was one night where I could not smell, I could not taste anything. It passed very quickly. It was a little bit freaky, but there it is. This is life. I live in an area that has been absolutely pummeled by the coronavirus. Not because it is so widespread here, they don't really test, but the area has been pummeled because people don't have any economic opportunity and the government does not help them out. People line up for a food distribution starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. Food is distributed at 1 p.m. There is no other economic opportunity that they have that will net them $3 worth of food because this area relies heavily on tourism. Meanwhile, in the United States, the government actually has the ability to provide their citizens with free money. People, of course, want the government to provide because they are robbing them of their ability to conduct their business, to go to their employment. And people are going to start getting addicted to the heroin distributed by the government. The only reason that the U.S. heroin, aka the free money, has any potency and doesn't run like Venezuelan smack does, aka their bolivar, their currency, which isn't worth the paper that is printed on, is because the cost of producing more currency for the United States is distributed worldwide. This is the greatest benefit that you have in terms of being the reserve currency. Everybody has to have it. That might end very soon. Cryptocurrency will take over, something with a fixed and limited supply that can't be printed into oblivion, which is why you are seeing Bitcoin rising so rapidly, as I predicted that it would months and months ago. Here's the link. See, when you just print currency to distribute it to the masses, you are borrowing against our children. You are devaluing the currency. You are getting people addicted to the free money and robbing them of their ability to produce. If you don't produce anything, if there is no milk to buy in the grocery store, for example, because you shut down the distribution system that takes it from the farm to the grocery store, they have to pour it out into the fields to fertilize it so the milk at least offers them some utility. The money that they printed, that they distributed to you, are going to be chasing an ever decreasing supply of product. And guess what? In addition to inflating the currency, the prices are going to rise because of lack of supply. Printing all this money will result in greater differential of wealth, not soften it, because all this money somehow ends up at the top. Every time there's a stimulus, you notice that the stock market jumps, because stocks and companies that have real assets and are selling real assets like milk, that's a real asset, or airplanes, just raise the prices to account for the inflationary money printing. The average person can't do that. If you have cash, you are going to see the value of that cash eaten away. Just as an example, in Venezuela, if you had held cash, in other areas of the world, if you had held on to cash in the bank, one day suddenly you wake up and what used to be able to buy you a house will buy you maybe a dinner at the local diner. This is what happens overnight when people are constantly accounting for massive, massive inflation. Whether or not that happens here is irregardless of the fact that it's happening throughout the world, and the US currency will certainly be devalued to some degree. So what happens to the average person? They are unable to go to work. They have to keep their kids at home. Their kids aren't at school. They get depressed. Guess what is open during lockdowns? In Michigan, for example. Liquor stores. Marijuana dispensaries in other areas as well have been kept open because they want to keep people sedated. Kids are kept home from school. Kids are not associating with their friends. They are not learning in person. They are skipping out on their education. Who is this benefiting? Meanwhile, the elite, who are getting a steady paycheck whether or not they go to work, are leaving lives of leisure and very comfortably. It's not so bad for them. But for the 20-something-year-old who has to stay home, who can't go out and associate with their friends, they are banging their heads in the wall because they're going crazy. And why do you think that Antifa is just destroying things? This is a psychosis that we are creating. The mental health of our society will decline rapidly if we lock down. So then we have to determine, what are the benefits of the lockdown? What is the purpose of doing so? Look, the disease is already endemic throughout the world. The fatality rate, of course, has been dropping. But what is the upside to locking everything down? The upside is the government is able to maintain more control. They get to experiment with how far what people are willing to accept. You keep pushing a little bit, pushing a little bit, pushing a little bit. It's like boiling a frog in water. You just keep turning up the heat until suddenly the frog is dead. If you turn it up all at once, the frog hops out. The same thing is if I keep pushing just a little bit, and I see when the pushback happens, then I just pull back and then I start again. This is the human version of that. We cannot continue to give up our liberties. All of these authoritarian governors and city mayors desire to do that. You take a look in Los Angeles. They are turning off the water and power supply to places that held get-togethers that were too large, aka parties, that the government told you that you could not do. This is our liberty as a human being, and you cannot lock down forever. 8 months out of somebody's life is a huge takeaway. You cannot just do that. And how much longer is this going to go on? 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Hey, how about 5 years? What if the vaccine doesn't work? What happens then? Do we continue to lock down? Do we continue to live in fear with something with a declining death rate? It is not killing nearly as many people as it used to as a percentage. We are getting better at treating the disease, and all you're doing is making people miserable, and you're going to destroy the economy. The economy will implode. Meanwhile, China over there continues on its merry way to dominate the world while we're distracted at home with presidential elections. Look, at some point, everybody in this world is going to be exposed to the disease. That's just the reality of it. You can't live in fear of it. If this was, the H1N1, which killed so many people 14 years ago, I believe it was, 500,000 people died, where was the press coverage of this? The point is that fear is being used as a means to control you because they make the disease to be far worse than it is, and then they can get done whatever it is that the elites desire. And this is the whole reason that the populist president, Donald Trump, may, and it has not been determined yet, may have been voted out of office. Because of COVID, because of the fear, because the media is able to make these bold claims that, oh my God, everybody who gets corona is at risk, and they stuff down anything that doesn't meet their narrative. On social media, you cannot spread certain information. The information must be able to rise to the top, and then we are able to decipher and decide what actually has merit or not. But they continually suppress stuff. And that is unfortunately the reality that we're living in, where a few tech oligarchs and the newspapers are deciding what you can and cannot read, what you must be able to decide. And the same thing with the presidential race, but that's another story. Look, life has risk. Every single day that we step outside, every time we step into a car, we are taking a risk. It's riskier than staying at home in bed. I think we can all agree on that. Nevertheless, we go out there and we do that because, hey, it offers us a benefit. And I refuse to live the rest of my life locked down. 8 months is far, far, far too long. And we must decide as a society to stand against the proposed lockdowns that are already taking place in New York and New Jersey. We can all try to mitigate the risk, especially for those who are most vulnerable. But we have to just deal with the fact that we are being controlled, and this is not the way that we want our society to be going forward. This is a loss of liberty, which is the greatest takeaway, the greatest loss that we can have as individuals. Know this. Peace out. If you guys like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and share the video. Peace and blessings to everybody. Stand up and don't let them make you live in fear. We all die sometime. Peace.